Hello, Namaskar, welcome you to the SAAR Analysis. I am Chaman Nayak and here's my take. For this is saying that India's economy is powered by technology, highways, factories and rapidly expanding middle class. But here a question investors should be asking today, can one missing monsoon slow down the world's fastest growing economy? Because on the June 21st, India's monsoon rainfall was running 42% to 42.2% below the long period average. It is not oil, neither it is war, nor it is a stock market crash, but rainfall. I'm repeating, in India, the rainfall deficit is not just a weather statistic phenomena. It can become the food price shock, it can become the rural income crisis, and eventually it can become the inflation problem for 1.4 billion people. Let's dig it out. Here's what evidence speaks about. The Reserve Bank of India has raised warning that adverse southwest monsoon could cloud India's growth inflation outlook. Well, here let us discuss about this cause because early numbers are serious. But the central India has recorded deficit of nearly 67%. East and Northeast India were down around 40%, and across the country, the overall monsoon shortfall stood around 42% below the normal. This matters because agriculture may contribute to the smaller shares of the India's GDP than before, but it still supports nearly half of India's workforce. And importantly, the food inflation in India does not need a national crop failure to rise, because a delayed monsoon can disrupt the swing, a weak monsoon can reduce the output, and a lower output can push the prices of vegetables, pulses, cereals, and edible oils. Well, the economic chain might begins in the soil, but it ends at the supermarket. Now the question arises, why is this so important? Because India has become one of the most important economic stories. It remains a major engine growth for the global growth. It becomes a manufacturing alternative to China and becomes a strategic market for the global capital. But India's growth story carries one structural vulnerability, and that is food inflation. If a monsoon remains weak, rural demand could soften not just the food prices but the inflation as well. That it creates the most uncomfortable situation for any central bank, because slower growth but a high inflation. RBI might have less rooms to cut the interest rate, but that affects almost every single thing, from home loans to business borrowing to investment sentiments and foreign capital inflows from global market. The signal is clear. India's economic resilience is increasingly being tested not only by the geopolitics abroad but the climatic volatility at home even. Now let's look at the bigger picture. India does not have buffers, it has strong food grain stocks, a more prepared policy system, improved irrigation coverage, and ability to intervene in the food markets. But the larger question is not whether India can survive a weak monsoon session or not. Obviously, it can, but the real question is whether India can sustain high growth when climatic shocks become more frequent, when the food prices becomes more volatile, and when millions of household exports to economics of the rain. Now, here's my take. India is no longer competing on the GDP terms or GDP growth, it is competing on the resilience. And the next phase of India's rise might not decide in the boardrooms, technological park, or global summit. It might decide how effectively India can protect its food prices, farms' incomes, and consumer confidence when the risk does not cooperate. Because if one session weak, it can reshape the inflation, interest rate, and the growth expectation. And here's a question arises, what happens when a climatic risk become India's most persistent economic variable? That's all from today's analysis. I will be back with another episode. Till then, thank you for watching this.